All right, we're recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our. Hi, Kate. We want to welcome today my friend and a fellow Canadian, Xuan Liu, to the Empowerment Group meeting today. I've known Xuan for a few years. She was a coach for me. I think I was one of her first students. Let's see, she's from Toronto originally, and she grew up in Toronto, went to Waterloo, played online in local casinos while she was in school. I heard some stories about you and through Mike Watson stories and Waterloo stories. Anyway, we won't go there. She started traveling on the EPT circuit and had some breakout results. She was on the EPT Players Council and on the Global Poker League Canadian winning team. That was so much fun. I was so sorry that didn't last too long. I loved that Global Poker League, and was sponsored by a few sites, traveled for many years to play poker. She eventually took a personal break, and now she's playing invitational cash games. Just bought a house in Vegas, and she does Chinese commentary for WPT events. And she's a consultant and instructor for Poker Powher, which we are going to hear about tonight. Anyway, that's all. Welcome, Xuan.
Hi, everybody.
So let's start.
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you here. Let's start with you. Tell us a little bit.
I must better turn it down because it's so loud in my ears. I guess.
We're just going to mute you, Kate, for a minute, if you don't mind. And so what we're going to do is ask you a few questions, and then we'll put, I'll put it out to the audience and see if anyone else has questions for you. So if you'd like to give us a bit of a rundown how you ever got started playing poker, let's hear that.
Okay, there's like the short version and there's a long version. I'll do something in between. When I was young, I always loved games of skill and chance. I watched this Chinese movie called God of Gamblers when I was like 5 years old or something, and just like loved the concept of poker. They were playing draw poker at the time, but I just loved, having an opponent, outsmarting them, counting odds, things like that. So it was a very memorable experience for me. And when, I first started watching poker on television, I realized that, these guys, these amateurs like Chris Moneymaker, who like, they weren't doing anything I couldn't do. And so, I was in university at the time. I was a little disillusioned with like my career prospects. It was so competitive, and, all my friends, like, don't get me wrong, like I think I'm, bright, but all my friends worked harder than me, and I was just drawn to this card game. So I kind of just set out to play a lot online. I started at, Brantford Casino, for those of you who are Ontario based. That was the closest one near University of Waterloo. I started by playing 1-2 live limit. I graduated to, the 2-5 game, then eventually played the 5-5 game at Niagara Falls for a while. That time I was also playing online. I was crushing sit and goes. I was also one of the top winners on FTP's Rush Poker when it first came out. So one of the years when WPT Fallsview came around, I just used to grind those satellites, and immediately, I went from playing $5 sit and goes to like getting a bankroll to play like a 10K tournament. Don't get me wrong, I was not, actually rolled for it, but I was definitely taking shots, and I won a couple of those seats. And so, didn't really understand the concept of selling action at that time, but just thought I could be a tournament grinder immediately. Went on probation for school because I was playing so much poker. So I moved down to Niagara Falls, grinded the 5-5 cash game. It was basically the highest at the time. I think they had like a 10-20 on the weekends and stuff like that. But that was a pretty juicy game back then. And, you know, I was young, so I didn't have like a lot of financial responsibilities or anything. And I remember I stayed at like the hostel in Niagara Falls. It was like $300 a week or $300 a month or something. And I would just grind those cash games on the weekends. Um, so after that, like eventually I was encouraged to travel for poker. I went to BCPC in 2007. I was like the last woman standing. Kept on getting encouraged from people in the industry. Eventually moved down to LA for a while to play the cash games there. I actually got crushed and absolutely annihilated. I ended up getting backed, but went into like makeup and just thought that was like the worst period of my life. But I learned so much about, you know, hustlers and angle shooting and things like that. And so I think I moved back for a while and kept on playing online. And eventually, because I had like, you know, nice graphs online, I was able to like sell action for like 5K NAPTs and EPTs and things like that. Exactly, trial by fire. And like so many lessons I learned from LA really helped me on the tournament scene. Just, you know, knowing what people are capable of, just like being aware of like all the potential angles and scams and things like that. And yeah, it definitely hardened my shell by a lot, but I'm better for it, I think. And my mom like hated the idea. She really wanted me to like do something in finance. I was taking my CFA at the time, but she gave me an ultimatum and she eventually said that I could travel for a year and play poker, but by the end of that year, I would have to quit and get a real job. But luckily, I was so determined that, you know, I wanted to prove to her that there could be longevity in this career. And so I went to Europe. I, you know, didn't have much to my name, probably like 50K at that point. And I played a bunch of like 5K and 10K Euro EPTs. I just sold a bunch of my action and, you know, often stayed with friends and things like that. And that was kind of a breakout year for me. And I had like two $500,000 scores within like, you know, like 18 months or something like that.
Nice.
And was able to relay that into, you know, traveling the world and getting some brand ambassadors and things like that. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
longer version than I anticipated, but.
Well, sounds like a really exciting life to me. Sounds great. As you know, we like to travel for poker as well. How have you, you know, this is a
Oh, yeah.
group for empowering. I know I've got lag on my computer. Sorry, I'm at the cottage. It's bad internet. We are a poker empowerment group for everyone, but especially for women, to try and get more women into the game. There's been a lot in the media lately about women and how the game may not be welcoming in certain ways for women or easy for them to break into. And how did you find it as a woman coming through the ranks in poker?
You know what, I have to be honest and say that while I've definitely experienced sexism at the table, I am super blessed for being like a younger, like, you know,
Pretty.
above average in attractiveness and things like that. So the sexism I do tends to be people who like look down on me, who underestimate me, who think I'm only there, you know, to like meet guys and things like that. And sometimes you can use those things to your advantage. But I've seen just ridiculous behavior against women who don't fit that demographic. And, you know, I've always been pretty vocal every time I've seen it. It's just not fair. It's like when guys think that, you know, females have this advantage, it's like very small section of women. You know, if you don't fit that paradigm, like you'll never be invited to the juicy games. You don't, you know, you're like an out person. No one's gonna spend their time trying to like improve your game and listen to what you have to say. And so, like I said, I've been blessed and lucky that, you know, immediately I was able to like make friends with some of the best players and learn from their experiences and that knowledge base, but it's not that peachy for everybody for sure.
Right, right. I know that what your latest venture in, Poker Powher. I know because I played the game that you had hosted online, and maybe you could tell us a bit about that because it sounds like a great thing.
Yeah, so Poker Power was formed around last year, right before the pandemic. I haven't been involved the entire time, but I have been for about 8 months now. We were founded by a woman entrepreneur who has a lot of other projects. She is the founder of Peak Six as well, a trading firm. And one day she wanted to realized she wanted to teach her daughter how to play poker. And I think she's like 16 years old and just like didn't see any resources out there. And so, you know, when you're that well off, like you can just say, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to create something that's going to teach women and I'm going to do it my way. So it's definitely a passion project to her. We're not entirely sure the direction that we're going, whether that's to you know, be involved with real money gaming or anything like that. But the core objective is to get 1 million women learning how to play poker, because no one can deny that poker skills translate to real life skills, translates to career skills and things like that. And women, you know, historically haven't always had the opportunity to completely overcome those obstacles on their own, whether it's, you know, lessons on financial freedom, lessons on negotiation, taking risks, improving your confidence in like a male dominated setting and things like that. So we're trying to teach all these lessons at once and through poker.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Do you think that having women-only poker events is good to attract more women into the game?
I think it's wonderful. Like I said, historically, women weren't even allowed in a lot of games. I mean, even these days, the juiciest private cash games at the hotel rooms with like, you know, the strippers and whatnot, like no girl's gonna be allowed in those games, right? That's kind of where all the money is. So having a space for women to get together and practice their craft and, you know, not worry about like looking silly in front of guys or being judged. It's important. It's like giving them more of an opportunity and showing them that they belong there if they want, and hopefully encouraging them and building up their confidence so that they can eventually compete in co-ed environments when they're ready.
Excellent. I'm going to open up the floor and ask if any of the panel here has any questions for Xuan.
Well, I had a question because I think taking on what Kim was just talking about, there's two elements to, and you know, I'm trying to figure this out myself. One, I like this notion of having like these comfortable places, like these women-only events, for instance. Like that feels like one track where we can get women more comfortable with the game, playing under, you know, this more comfortable circumstance. And then I think we need sort of like another parallel track where I don't remember, I think it was June Jenkins who I was talking to recently about how like the real world isn't a safe space, and so we kind of need a way to work on our ways to kind of mitigate that feeling of discomfort. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I feel like I don't want someone that, like, if someone's being uncomfortable, that shouldn't be their problem, you know what I mean? Like ultimately I think it is like they kind of feel like it's their problem, but I feel like what we're trying to do is create a situation where we all kind of own the cause of that. And I don't know, if I'm always looking for ways to be helpful at the table without like imposing my version of what helpful should be on the table. I guess, can you just speak to a little to that, or to sort of like the difficulty in calibrating?
Yeah, I think that's really a really considerate approach, Jim. So my thoughts on that, I do ultimately believe it is your personal responsibility to, practice and then gather the strength eventually to compete in co-ed environments if you so choose, and that you shouldn't expect other people to hold your hand the entire way and always create these, quote unquote, safe spaces for you. However, I don't think that's what this is about. Like there's a ton of specialty groups. There's, like Toronto location-based hobby groups. There's, age bracket hobby groups, things like that. And women making up, literally 50% of the demographic. Like, why shouldn't we have like one special hobby group that has like one event every tournament series or things like that? I don't think it's too much to ask. And I think, people who kind of like shifted around and claim that like we're asking for too much or that we're like whining, like those people seem to me like they're the actual people who are whining and complaining, right? Yeah, it's all in good fun. We're not saying, we're not as good as men. We're not saying like, all men trash or anything like that. Like we just want like this one event where we can do our thing and have fun with each other.
And have you experienced actual pushback yourself from just having that private event? Like, is that, I guess I see jerks out there sort of in theory talking about it, but I guess I'm just always surprised at how low the floor can be for people in the poker world sometimes, to be honest with you.
For sure. You know what? It's a debate that comes up every once in a while, every time the ladies event comes up. And, if I have the energy, I'll engage. If I don't, then I won't. Doug Polk actually posted something today about Maria Konnikova. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw it.
I read the whole thing.
Quoted some article and was like, who would refer? Yeah, I didn't read the article or anything, but like, is this really the spot you want to draw attention to? Like, Maria Konnikova done so much for the game, brought so much mainstream attention, and wrote so eloquently about the poker experience. And, I responded to the thread and I said, basically, by a pro's standards, no, she's not a top pro. However, by, like everybody's standard, like every single poker player, of course, she's like the top, I don't know, 2 percentile or whatever. You can't, top is such a subjective term, right? Like, what is that in relation to? Like all your buddies? No, she's a nobody. But for the world, like they see her and it's like, wow, she's traveled on the circuit. She's, had these like really cool results. Of course, she's the top pro. And why is he choosing to, nitpick like this one circumstance where a woman's gaining recognition, right? There's a lot of, I guess, like unknown male players who has articles written about them that he doesn't choose to focus on. But there's clearly a disconnect there between what he thinks he's doing to like help the world and what he's actually projecting based on like what he's saying. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. Like I said, if I feel like the conversation is going to be productive, I might engage. If I don't, then I try to avoid it as much as possible.
Do you think he really thinks that way, or do you think it's just clickbait for him? Because I feel like it didn't really make sense what he didn't really have an argument.
I think he really thinks that way.
He's
really bright in a lot of ways, but also I wouldn't exactly call him a worldly or like, right, cultured human. Right. Sorry, Doug.
I'm sure he's not watching.
The thing that you have to wonder about though, like somebody like him with such a huge following, and there's such big issues in today's world about gender equality. If you don't have anything good to say about somebody, why do it? Right? What's the purpose in that, right? I think in the end result, he just makes himself look bad.
Yeah, if you like went further down his thread, he actually thinks he's helping women by pointing out that women don't need their hands held. and they don't need to put on a pedestal for everything that's written about them, when it's just like a mediocre success. He's like, you know, a woman like going deep in a tournament or something, like that means nothing. It's not a testament to like her skill level or things like that. But yeah, he's really not recognizing that it's, you know, almost purely a numbers game. Like if 5% of the tournament field is women and one of them does well, it is kind of a big deal, right? It's less so when you're that 95%, but if, you know, there weren't many of you to begin with, then like it's something we're celebrating. And another response of mine was that, you know, men have been playing Texas Hold'em for like about 100 years. You know, women really have not. We weren't allowed in those spaces, and to this day we're still fighting for, you know, a lot of very basic human rights in a lot of parts of the world. We didn't have the luxury, the time, the determination, things like that, to think about pursuing this game as a hobby. And so there's going to be less women who get into the game, which means there's going to be less women who become pros, which in turn means that there's going to be less women who do well. You know, it's not rocket science. It's not, you know, whatever he's trying to do.
I would definitely like to see the demographic slowly change. I mean, poker started out in back rooms, smoking cigars and drinking liquor and keeping the women out. And that's how it started, but it's developed over the years into like an intuitive, cerebral game. And we're really good at that. Women are really good at that stuff. So as it becomes more up our alley, then I think that I think the demographic will slowly change. It just has to be encouraged in every way we can.
100%. And, you know, we're not like, I don't expect 50% of the field to be women, but right now it's like around 5%, even less during the main event, a bit more online because you can be anonymous, but I can, you know, even if we double the entire amount of women who play, like that's going to make a huge difference.
Right. Do you think sorry. I'm just wondering what's sort of holding some women back from becoming more involved in poker? Is it like, do they have just more important things to do in their opinion than play poker? Or is it that we're too busy raising families? What is the reasoning there? Why aren't there more young women coming into the game? Which I know is one of the things you guys are encouraging with Poker Powher, with the college level and everything, trying to get more young women into the game. Because even if we pick it up as young women and we maybe stop for a while and have families, and then we can pick it up again in our middle years, you know?
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted question. So part of it is definitely the social upbringing. You know, many women aren't taught to be responsible or good with money, to have financial acumen. Some women choose to do the family route and be less risky, so more risk averse, like not get into gambling and things like that. There's also the stigma involved. There's also, you know, many women around the world are taught that, you know, this is what being a good girl is, and you have to follow these rules or else you're going to be ostracized by society. You're not going to be able to find a husband. You know, even if you don't believe that on like so many levels, there's, you know, if you've been raised around people like that, it's a voice at the back of your head. Another aspect of it is like poker is hard work to make, you know, like to make a profitable living, like more than 6 figures a year. You need to be so dedicated and so good these days. I know if, you know, I was a bright person with a lot of prospects who was, you know, studious, like I probably wouldn't be looking to pursue poker as my #1 path, right? It's only because I also love the sense of adventure and things like that. Like all of these things had to fit perfectly for me to pursue this path. But, you know, those are rare ingredients. especially for a female. It's also, you know, representation. If you don't know a lot of female professionals who you look up to, then you're not going to really see it as a viable career choice, right? Yeah, like I said, it's so multifaceted.
What about just as a hobby though? Like the vast majority of men that play poker are not playing it professionally. The vast majority are recreational players. They're just playing it for fun or for whatever. So how do we get more women into that aspect of it? Just this is a really fun, interesting thing to do. It engages your mind. It's social. I would have thought it's cut out for women because it's a social game. But you're right. It's got so much stigma to it. Like I just tell my friends, oh, you're a gambler. I'll tell my friends I play poker. Oh, you're a gambler. No,
Yep.
I'm not a gambler. I'm a poker player. It's like there's a big difference. And I thought one of the things that was so great about Maria's book is she brought it into the limelight, into the general public, like that poker's a game that isn't just gambling. So
Mhm. Yeah, you know, that's exactly what Poker Powher is trying to do. Part of it is also marketing. If you grew up during the age of, you know, WPT Royal Flush Girls, you don't see yourself as a player, right? You aspire to be those models probably. And so like we're trying to market, you see like my banner behind us, you know, this is for Pride Month, but usually we have, you know, bright coloring, like a bit more feminine, things like that. And it shows women that like it's not just going to be a bunch of smelly guys in the basement like smoking cigars. It's also, you know, you can practice these, you can be social, have fun with your friends, and at the same time learn this really cool skill that can help you in other aspects of your life. You can use your brain power, you know, you can test your limits, and it's all in an environment where it's okay. It's more about risk and analysis and probabilities rather than gambling and degeneracy.
excellent. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah, sure. Xuan, coming back, moving away from the gender equality issues and coming to the game of poker itself and the strategy, we all learn lessons over the years as we learn to play and as we grow in the game. And I was just wondering, in terms of a message to female players who are learning the game and male players alike, what would be one of the biggest lessons that you have learned in poker?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I know early
That's a knack
on
for these.
it was having the confidence to have other people wait for you. I know this is kind of controversial and we don't like playing against players who are slow, but when I was an up and coming amateur player, I always used to be anxious when people had to wait for me, regardless of how large the decision was, because I respected other people's time more than my own time and my own abilities. And so I didn't want to take up space. But once I had decided that, you know, you need to do whatever it takes to become a winner. And sometimes like they can wait if they really want, they can call the clock on you. That's fine. So that was like one of the more practical things I learned. Another one was, I guess it's more about like work-life balance, you know. If you want to make a shitload of money playing poker, you can, but you're probably sacrificing a lot of other things, and you just have to really consider if like all those things are worth your poker success.
Those are really great messages. Thank you. I had the pleasure of watching your final table in person in the PCA in 2012. And, you know, it was just so fascinating. And now after these years, and I read about your mother's influence and her giving you the ultimatum, what does she think now? What happened following those 2 big wins?
Honestly, the thing with tournament poker is, so I haven't been playing tournaments in a while, but every time I go play and she hears that I lose, she'll still be like, okay, so you're gonna do something else now? Like after each win, it's like, okay, so like you're gonna keep playing. Like, when's the next one? But like after each loss, it's like, okay, stop now. Yeah. That's why they need, lessons on probability and sample size and things like that.
Right.
They mean well.
So for the men that are here, we have 4 here, great men here. When they see something at the poker table, how can they help in a situation where they see somebody that they feel is being rude or abusive to a woman at the table? Verbally, obviously.
Just if it's bad enough, just say, dude, just back off, chill out, just something like that. Just a comment like that to let him know that he's the one everybody's paying attention to. And he's not getting the right kind of attention.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
It's always tricky for guys because you don't want to come off too white knighty, like the girl can probably handle it herself as well. So it's like, should I say something? Should I not? But yeah, like if it gets really bad, definitely do. Maybe just like give them a glare, like when it first
Yeah.
starts or something like that.
Yeah, you don't have to turn it into a major drama event. Just de-escalate the situation and let the guy know it's probably best just to shut up and play.
that's not cool. Something
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
simple, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay.
Kim,
What
what have been your like worst experiences with sexism at the table?
Me
You guys
personally,
Sorry.
I've been fortunate enough not to have very many. Probably because I'm not young and beautiful. but I have only in the form of poker play, like men that have thought they could bully me in their poker play. But
Right.
so they've soon found out that that wasn't a thing they could do.
Awesome. You cleared.
That's the best response.
Yeah. I remember playing in the main event in maybe 2017. And I was at a table and this middle-aged gentleman was at the far side of the table from me, and he kept trying to get into hands with me. And he kept raising no matter what I did. So finally I went right to the end with him, and I just raised all in on him. And he just folded and he says, okay, I'm not getting involved with you anymore. So, and I didn't even have a very good hand. I just knew he was just bullying me, right? So it was like, he goes, I'm not going near her anymore. So that was fine. So as soon as I played back, got some respect. But I haven't had any really bad experiences, but I know that other women have had a difficult time and feel intimidated. I've generally surrounded myself with friends so that I haven't had to feel that way for the most part. So
Yeah.
I've been lucky, but not like everybody.
Awesome.
How do you think people like us that are part of a group like RecPoker can help as far as getting more women into the game to begin with? We can promote RecPoker in the poker room, but someone has to be in the poker room to do that. How can we maybe recruit more players to begin with? Because it seems like there's low-hanging fruit there. If only 5% of tournament players are women, there's got to be a lot of women who would like to play, but there's something holding them back, something discouraging.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. If you want, you can, either send beginning curious players to like an organization like Poker Powher, or you can like start your own beginners club, inviting women, maybe giving like fun prizes, things like that, that are more female oriented. I'm not sure what that would be at the top of my head, but, find like, you can do like wine and poker events, or just like super casual things where like getting them to like be comfortable enough to learn the game, but also not putting so much pressure, and not letting them be discouraged if they find out it's not for them. Just like, being super empathetic and compassionate and welcoming. Let your friends and family know, but also like, don't be weird and say, we're only allowing female members right now, female beginner players, you know. I know like the number one reason many women get started is, if their dads or their brothers or something like that play. So definitely, your family members is a great place to start. Speaking of low hanging fruit, just like encourage them. Like next time they're like, oh, it's not for me, or, like I bet, even if they're very risk averse, they've been curious about it, and they just, don't want to look or sound silly in front of you or their friends. So that's a great place to start.
Xuan, how 1 million women learning to play poker, that's a huge number. Do you have any idea of how many people you have taught to play poker so far?
That I have personally taught.
Or the group?
Probably a couple of hundred, but that includes like corporate events. So I've had maybe about like a dozen or so classes since I started. Each class is usually between 6 to like 18 players. And we've done a ton of corporate events. Like we did a collaboration with like Kellogg's MBA program, and we've done like esports events. So like all kinds of cool corporate crossovers, things like that. So, teaching women is like quite loose. We count each one that like we introduce to the game, but of course, like getting to a point where they are actually comfortable enough to sit at a table is quite different. But I think there's something like 30 million men out there who play poker. Like I don't think another 1 million women around the world in a several year time frame is too much to ask. We are like thinking about expanding to Europe and eventually Asia. So it's just like a word of mouth situation, and really exciting stuff coming through Poker Powher in the future.
Cool.
Do you think, I don't know if there's any stats on this, but do you think more women have taken up poker during this pandemic while they've been home, and there's more ability to play online? Do you think we'll see more women come into the game when the pandemic is over, into the live game?
That's a great question. I think in general, there will be more players. I feel like if you didn't play before the pandemic, you probably weren't going to start during the pandemic. Like I could be wrong. So it's probably like, stalled the amount of females getting into the game. I think especially, the pandemic is a time where people are panicking and worrying about like survival and things like that. So unless you enjoyed the game before and used it as like a hobby or like a soothing pastime, you're not going to be like, like, what should I do today? Like, pick up a new hobby that seems, quite risky and will potentially give you even more stress during the pandemic.
I'm wondering if more women, if they were playing before a little bit, have now taken some time to study and play some more with all the stuff that's online, and perhaps then we'll see a few more of them come into the live arena. I'm hoping so anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I am, however, optimistic that maybe in 2, 3, 5-year time, there will be more women. You know, one, partially due to Maria Konikova's book. 2, also Alex O'Brien published an article in the BBC lately about her heads-up match with Dan Bilzerian. And I think that's garnished pretty good mainstream interest. So who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, no, that's good. Jim, did you have a question? I saw you type something in chat there.
But yeah, I think we often talk about specific actions we can take at the table when we see someone that's being made uncomfortable. But I think that's not just for women, but for people generally. I think we do kind of have a responsibility to the community to self-police when people are getting out of line, no matter what. So, but specifically with women, is there something in the time of our lives when we're not at the table playing poker? Maybe when we're talking about poker with our friends, or when we're creating poker content, you know, or like you know, setting discussion, like when we're not playing poker, what are there things that we can be doing to be better allies or champions for this cause? Not at the table.
Yeah, so much of the sexism in poker doesn't actually take place at the poker table, right? Like I said, like not that many females, if any, are going to get into the juiciest high stakes cash games. And if you hear about how a lot of top professionals or even casual players talk about women, you know, judging the servers that come by, you know, calling women the rake, things like that, it's not helping bring more women into the industry for sure. So just like being more conscious of the language that you're using, not only in front of women, but like when you're speaking like that to your buddies. I know it's all in good fun, but you're kind of reinforcing these like old social habits that aren't ultimately good for women. So like just be mindful of that, and you know, how you speak in front of like even your kids and things like that, because they learn from you. You know, how you talk about women, how and yeah, all of it is related. And you know, I'm not expecting everyone to be a model citizen, but just like a tiny little bit goes a long way.
That's great. That's amazing. That's good advice. If anyone else has any questions, I think we're going to wrap this up. Unless anyone else has some comments. Yeah.
I just have one thing I have to ask, because I read about you have a love affair with comic books. Do you have a favorite character?
Oh, I guess it's a little narcissistic, but I like X-23 because I see like some of myself in her. So she's a Marvel character, and she's kind of like the she was modeled after Wolverine.
Okay.
She has like a hook. She kind of looks like me. She has like dark black hair, and you know, she's kind of like, she's been through a lot of like trauma, and she's kind of jaded, and so she's a cool character.
Very good.
That's fun. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, and hopefully we'll see some improvements over the next few years. And Elizabeth and I will see you in Vegas in the fall.
Yes, hopefully. Yes, definitely.
Let me know if there's anything else, if I can post anything on social about RecPoker. I would love to do that. And have fun, everybody, and good luck at the tables. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.